Hi, this is Kevin Trainer, and welcome to my video in which I present the requirements for exercise 2 in the conceptual data modeling assignment in IS439. And I'm doing this in the spring of 2022. So if you're going to do this exercise 2, exercise 2 is the optional challenge exercise. Then what you're going to do is you're going to expand your conceptual data model to include um, authentication and authorization. So authentication is who is able to log in. Okay, what individuals are able to log in. You can see that we have a login link. So the requirement is, well, you're only allowed to log in if you're known and you know your password. All right. And then the authorization is what are individual users authorized to do? Okay. Now, when we finally get to the point where we're going to build this, I'm going to provide you with a document that's going to say the following things. So, well, I didn't want that to go away. Now, did I? There it is. So it is, this is a document with the details of how to implement authorization. Again, how do you implement authentication? Well, we have usernames that are associated with passwords, okay? And then you log in if you have a username and you have a password. Okay, now the way that we're going to do this authorization is we're going to set up user groups, okay? And so a given user can be assigned to one or more user groups, okay? Or they can be a super user, okay? And the user groups that we're going to have are, forget the CI, but user, so they're just a user of any kind of our system. They're a scheduler, okay, or they're a registrar, okay? And so users are just people who we're going to allow to view the data in our system, okay? And schedulers are going to be people who schedule courses, okay? And it turns out that they're going to be able to add things like, well, they're going to be able to add and change and delete the period, the year, the semester, the course, the section, the instructor, but not the student and the registration. They can just see those. Okay. Okay, so they set up the courses, they assign the instructors. Do they register the students and uh, um, register for them for particular sections? No, they don't. Okay, who does that? Well, somebody who's in the group registrar. Okay, so if you're in the group scheduler, you can do almost anything, but not with student and registration. Okay, if you're in the group registrar, you can only see period and year and semester and course and section and instructor, but you can do everything with student and registration. Okay, so this is what we're eventually going to implement. Okay, all right, so these are really the requirements for that. Okay, so what we need is we need to be able, we've got users, okay, and then we've got user groups, okay, and we need to know if a particular user is a member of a particular user group, okay, and then for each user group, we need to know what permissions they have for all of the parts of the database. Okay? All right. And the details of this scheme are not as important as the broad strokes. And on top of this, as a super user, they can do anything. Okay, now who would we make a super user? Well, it's convenient to be a super user when you're the developer. Okay, it's convenient to be a super user if you're the one or two system admins. Okay, but apart from that, you don't want any of the regular users to be super users. You want them to be associated with one of the groups. Okay, so that's how it works right now. Okay, so when you're coming up with a conceptual data model, well, then you need a conceptual data model that supports this kind of scheme. All right, so that's that. Okay, so let's see this in action. Okay, so I have a user who's called tester. You'll recognize that, and I'm going to put in the password for tester. Okay, and a tester can do all of the functions on all of the data. So when tester it clicks on instructors, they can create a new instructor. If they go to a particular instructor, yes, they can edit. No, yes, they can delete. So full CRUD, right? So we can list them all. We can create a new one. Okay. We can we can change and we can delete. Full CRUD. Okay. CRUD. All right. Okay. So if somebody is a super user, they can do it for all of these instructors and sections and courses and semesters and students and registrations. It turns out that if you're a super user, you can also do it for year and period, which are not visible here. You have to go into the well, I'm going to give a little more detail. You have to go into the Django admin app to do those things. Okay, and that's the kind of thing that adding more years or adding more periods, that's the kind of thing that might be done by your system admin, who's a super user. Okay, so that's what super users can do. Okay, so let's see what somebody in the user group can do. Okay, just a plain old user. Okay, so we're going to log out as a tester. And we're going to log in as, I think the name is clerk. Okay. And let's see if this works. Yep, that worked. So we can tell the clerk's logged in because it says log out clerk. So there's a logout link. Okay. And we've got navigation to all of the parts, okay? But what's interesting is when you click on instructors, okay, you have an instructor list, okay? If you go to a particular instructor, you can go to the detail page, okay? But there are no buttons for edit and delete, okay? So in a typical modern web application, if you can't do something, you can't see it. So you can't see that you're able to edit and delete because as a clerk who's a part of just the user group, you're not allowed to do that. Okay. Likewise, if you go back to this instructor list page, there's no create button. Why? Because you're not allowed to create. So you can only see what you're allowed to know about, and you can only get the controls for what you're allowed to do. Okay, and it's the same for sections. No create, courses, semesters, students, registrations, about. You can go to the about page. Everybody can go to the about page. Okay, all right. So we see what happens for somebody who is part of this. Sorry, hang on. Just part of the user group. Okay. Okay. We've seen the super user. We've seen the user. We've already seen what if you're not part of any group. Okay, but we haven't really paid attention to it. So if I log out, okay, I'm not part of any group. What can I see? Just the about page. If I'm not logged in, I can just see the about page. And it's the current style of these kinds of applications that you don't see what you don't, you can't see what you're not allowed to know about. Okay. You're only shown the functionality that you're uh, that you're authorized for. And if you don't have any authorization for any of those other database entity types, well, you don't even know they exist. Okay, so you'll probably remember that the scheduler, let's find the scheduler. The scheduler here, the scheduler has complete access to everything except student and registration. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. Okay, so I created a user called scheduler who's in that group. Okay, and we'll log in. Okay, so for the instructors, you can see the create a button. You'll have to trust me. In addition to create, you've got the edit and the delete. You have all those. So you have that for instructors. You have it for sections. You have it for courses. You have it for semesters. But if you're in the scheduler group, you're only going to have you're only going to be able to list out the students and go to their detail page, but you're not going to be able to either edit or delete, and you're not going to be able to create a new student. There's no create button. And the same for registrations. So pretty much full power on instructors and sections and courses and semesters, but very limited power on students and registrations. Okay. And we've got one more group that we've got to be able to support. And this group is called the registrar group. And again, they've got very limited authorizations on period and year and semester and course and section and all that kind of stuff. Okay, but they've got full authorization on student and registration. Okay, so let's log in again. Okay, and I created a user. I created a user with the name of their group, so registrar. Okay, and let's log in. Okay, and again, we can see all these things because we have some authorization on everything, but for somebody in the registrar group, you have very limited authorization on instructors, sections, courses, and semesters. So you can see we don't get the create button on any of these. Okay, but then you've got full on student. Okay, so we have the create button for student. Okay, and then if we go to the detail page, we have the edit and the delete. Okay, so we have that, and we have that full capability for registration as well. So we can create a new one, or if we pick an existing one, we can do the edit, or we can do the delete. Okay, so again, this is a pretty typical um, um, scheme for this kind of a database-oriented system, that we would be given out authority based upon the CRUD functionality, okay, and that we would do it pretty typically. It's not feasible to maintain a list of authorizations by person. Okay, so the way it's done in most systems, and has been done for, well, since the early days of Linux, so that's from the early days of Unix, so it's from like the late 60s on, so 50 or more years. What we typically do is we give the permissions, these authorizations, we give them to groups. Okay, and then when we create a user, then we assign them to the groups that they're allowed to be part of. And it's possible for somebody to, it's possible to create a user who can be assigned to all of these. Okay, so you could assign them to the user, the scheduler, the registrar, and the super user group. Now, in terms of usefulness, if you're going to make somebody a super user, well, then it doesn't make sense to also assign them to these, but you could. Okay. And if you look at the way we're going to assign the permissions to each of the groups, it doesn't make sense to put somebody in the scheduler group and also make them a user, because the scheduler group has all the permissions that the user has. Likewise, the registrar group has all the permissions that the user has. But you could, if you wanted to, you could. Okay, so that's the scheme. That's how it works. And if you decide to do exercise 2, you need to include enough further conceptual data model to support this authentication and authorization scheme. So that's enough for me. I'll say bye until next time. Bye-bye.